tap, tap of Chamberlain's umbrella at Munich. I want no confrontation, I want no boycotts, I want no sanctions, but I say that if we do not say to Russia that their neighbouring countries have the right to make the choices they wish to do, then we are returning to a dangerous world. And I have to say, whatever retired diplomats might think, no British parliamentarian should ever deny the freedom to the nations of Europe to decide the friends, the alliances and the partnerships that they wish to set in place for their people.
Thank you very much, Denis, making the point of the mockery of international law to say that any country cannot have the right to join the institutions they wish to if they so vote accordingly, and various other points aside. And just as people said of the Georgia-Russia war or military conflict of a month ago, that it's broken the old adage that two countries that have McDonald's don't go to war with each other. So Denis has proven that two people who play tennis with each other can also very strongly disagree. Our fourth speaker, seconding against the motion, is Alexey Pushkov. Alexey, if you'd like to take to the podium. A very popular and ubiquitous face on Russian television. He is also professor at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. Speaking against the motion, Alexey Pushkov.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are a lot of emotions involved, as we heard from the Ukrainian speaker and the previous speaker. And there is a lot of talk about values, about rights. Nobody questioned the rights of Georgia and Ukraine to join NATO. I never heard the Russian government to question this right. The debate is not about rights. The debate is about wisdom. The debate is about what the population wants in Ukraine. The debate is about the fact whether the Ukrainian president is really representing the wish of the Ukrainians to join this organization, or he is presenting Ukraine as willing to join while he has only 7% of support in the electorate and is bound to lose the next presidential elections, or at least he runs a very serious risk of losing the next presidential election. So that's what the question is about, to my mind. I think that the talk about values is emotionally understandable, but sometimes values like good intentions can pave the road to hell. We all know that the United States went to invade Iraq, also Great Britain, fighting for values. Now, if you talk to Iraqis, quite a few of them are willing to go back to the Saddam Hussein time, because they are tired of living in a country where every day 40 people die from terrorist attacks. Or even if you say it's not every day, then it's every week. So when something is done in the name of values, we should still ask ourselves the questions: was it wise to do this? Or the notion of values was distorted in order to cover some other goals? Maybe it's oil, maybe it's some kind of neoconservative design for the big Middle East, maybe it is some strategic concept which was born in the White House in the United States. And values are just a kind of cover for this. Also, I have to say that as Ukraine and Georgia, the governments of those countries have the right to explain their case, the Russian government has also the right to explain its case. I don't think that anybody can say that Russia has no right to explain its position. So I will try shortly to explain why Russia is not very optimistic about this prospect. Definitely when such things are decided, who becomes a member of a military alliance? Because NATO is a military alliance, and all this talk that NATO is just about democracy, excuse me, but it's sheer nonsense. NATO is fighting in Afghanistan. Is it trying to establish democracy in Afghanistan? I don't know what it is doing there. It's fighting the Taliban, basically. And what happens after the war, nobody knows. So NATO is a military alliance. It has bombed Belgrade. So NATO is a military alliance. It has bases, it has troops, and it slowly advances towards the Russian borders. The first wave of NATO expansion happened in 1999, the second in 2004. And Russia, as it was rightly pointed out, made an attempt to put this idea in 2002. Putin made an attempt to put the idea of Russia joining NATO. But somehow it was basically not considered in a positive light. So in Russia, the feeling is that NATO moves towards the Russian borders for some other reasons than just promoting democracy. Mr. Rybachuk here said, and quite rightly so, that Ukraine is a democracy, and not a managed democracy, but a real democracy. There is a lot of turmoil in Ukraine. Sometimes there is no government, but okay, it's a democracy. So 15 years without being members of NATO did not prevent Ukrainians to be a democracy. Russia did not really kill the Ukrainian democracy, and it will not. It has, first, no means to kill the Ukrainian democracy. Second, there is no political leader in Russia who would call for this. Then we hear that Georgia is a democracy. Once again, they are toppling their governments themselves. They kill their prime ministers. 2 of them were killed in the time span of 15 years. They kill their leaders. Maybe it is democracy. It's up to you to judge. Once again, 15 years without being members of NATO did not prevent Georgia from being such a democracy. So I think that the question is not about democracy. The question is about security and strategic positions. Now, what worries Russia? First, Ukraine has about 1,400, 1,500 kilometers of joint border with Russia. So if this becomes a NATO country, now it's an open border. Mr. Rybachuk can come to Moscow tomorrow. I can come to Kyiv tomorrow. If it is a NATO country, we don't have an open border with no country of NATO. So the border should be closed. And it will be closed. And so quite a few citizens who have relatives, and as you may know, in Ukraine, there are 14 million people who define themselves as Russians. There are many more Russian speakers, but 14 million think they are Russians and they have relatives in Russia. There are a lot of Ukrainians living in Russia too. Millions and millions, more than 10 million people living in Russia. So the border will be closed. Because it is a NATO country, there are security requirements. Visas will be introduced. First. Second, Russia will have to reconsider its all security border with Ukraine, and it will cost a lot. And it is not something which Russia wants to do. It does not want to create a military border with Ukraine. Third, we see a very worrisome trend. And those are facts. Those are not emotions. In 1997, when Russia and NATO signed the founding act of cooperation between Russia and NATO, in the founding act there was a declaration that no military bases will appear on the territory of the new member states. Since that time, we've seen American bases appearing in Poland, ABM missiles, and a radar in the Czech Republic. You've heard about it. 70% of Czechs are against this, but still it will be placed there. So military bases are appearing on the territory of new member states. Now, Mr. Yushchenko tells us, no, nothing will appear on the territory of Ukraine. The problem is, can we trust Mr. Yushchenko? Mr. Yushchenko has a problem with Russia. He hates Russia. Basically, he has the right to hate Russia. I don't want to not to recognize the right for Mr. Yushchenko. But we also have the right to ask ourselves questions. Mr. Yushchenko is engaged in the glorification of everybody who fought against Russia since 300 years. One of his main heroes is Roman Shukhevich, who was the head of the pro-Nazi Ukrainian Liberation Army, This army was part of the Hitler army.